Alrighty, welcome everyone. I'm TeeHee, and I want to talk a little bit about CG in anime. Because some of you from the comments seem to have gotten the idea that I hate CG, or that I'm inherently against CG, or that I think it's inherently bad. Most of these comments are on the ZLSaga videos, and some of them are elsewhere. But I just want to put this to rest and make my position on the matter extremely clear. The way I see it, CG is a tool in the toolkit. That's all it is. The only thing that I will ever talk about when it comes to CG is, was it done well? And was the decision to grab that tool instead of another tool the right decision? Those are the only things that I'll talk about. It is a decision that is made. It is a tool that is reached for. And for the purpose of this video, I've gone and grabbed some tools. So let's jump into analogy for a second. Since we're talking about video and cuts, I thought we would use cutting tools. So this is a skill saw. It's a nice, hefty, powered handsaw. Okay? Doesn't have a blade in it right now, but this is a skill saw. The bog standard powered handsaw. Once you set it up, it takes a little while to set up, but once you set it up with a blade in it, the right blade for the job, and you plug it in, it basically does the work for you. This is, for our analogy, CGI, computer-generated graphics. This is CG. Ta-da! Now, once you've set it up with a blade and plugged it in, this thing will cut fast as hell, and it'll do most of the work for you. You don't really have to push very hard, don't have to use much elbow grease. It does the job for you, but it can really only cut in a straight line. If you try doing anything detailed with it, it's not going to work so well. It can only do what you've set it to do, and that is to cut straight lines and things. And when you do cut straight lines and things, it ends up being a little bit rough around the edges, maybe not exactly the cleanest cut. Okay, so that, for our analogy, is CGI. Now, this is a Japanese pole saw. It's a flush cut saw. It's also a serrated bladed saw, but it doesn't require any setup. You can just pick it up and use it, right? And you can just get to doing whatever you're doing with this. This is somewhere in the middle. This is something more like traditional animation, but with some digital effects work over the top of it, okay? So, it's clean, it's easy, it can cut most anything, you can do some finer work with it, you can cut curves, whatever, but it's going to take some elbow grease, you're going to have to actually work at it. So that's your traditional animation with digital effects, which is the majority of animation that's used at this point in anime. This is just a knife. It's not very clean, but this is just a knife. It's a nice knife. These are great knives, by the way. This is by Mora. They're Swedish carbon steel. I have to clean this, otherwise it'll rust. Yeah, they're Swedish carbon steel, and they're sharp as hell, and they've got a great grip on there, right? This is your standard cutting tool. But it's not great for going through hard stuff. You'd be better off with the digital effects applied. But you can do a lot of detailed work with this. You could whittle with this, right? You could whittle something down and really get detailed with it. And go get pretty good quality out of that. So that's your true traditional cell animation. Okay? Clean, non-serrated blade. Simple. You can do anything that you can do with digital effects. With the traditional, it just takes more work. You can do anything that you could do with the skill saw. With the traditional, it just takes a lot more work. It's a lot slower. But you could do it. Just take you sharpening the blade a few times and really working at it. But you could do it. You could cut plywood if you really wanted to. And then, finally, we have the X-Acto knife. Very, very, very sharp, but also very tiny. This is something like Sakuga. This is something on the level of really, really high-end, high-action, high-quality animation cuts. That's your X-Acto knife. The thing about this is it's expensive, it's fragile, relatively, and if you're trying to cut through a piece of wood with this, well, you're not going to get very far. But unlike all the rest, you can do incredibly detailed, incredibly beautiful work with a super sharp, tiny X-Acto knife like this. Now, there's overlap between all of these. They can all do some of the same things. They're all cutting tools, but they're all suited for different jobs. CG is set and forget and get going. Traditional plus digital effects is partly set and forget and partly a good bit of elbow grease, and it comes out looking pretty good. Using the traditional clean cuts, cell animation, that's going to be a lot of your work. It's going to take a lot of work to do, but you're going to get really clean cuts, and it's going to be very attractive finished product. Sakuga, it's only going to be used for the final detail work and the little tiny pieces of super detailed, super meticulous, intricate stuff where you really want it to shine. That's your lineup of tools. Now, if you're watching a craftsman at work, one thing that you could say about the way that they work is you could comment on which tools they choose to use when, and whether it's the right decision to use those tools at a given time. For example, let's talk about the last episode that I released of Zombieland Saga. In my opinion, the final dance number with the crew is a scene that should have been in this area of the toolkit. It should have been the fine detail work because it was a hype scene with lots of build up to it that should have looked really fucking good. Should have looked extraordinary. Should have been meticulous. Instead, they didn't even use this. They used this motherfucker. They used the big ass skill saw, and it looks rough around the edges. Because it's rough around the edges. Now, I have no problem with CG. No problem at all. It's a tool in the toolkit and it has its advantages. One of those advantages is that once you've set it up, once you've built the models and you've rigged them up to move in certain ways, you can do that animation, you can repeat that infinitely. You can shoot it from different camera angles if you want to, using a dynamic camera. That's a huge advantage. It's also a lot cheaper. If you're going to do a scene repeatedly, or you're going to have characters take the same motions repeatedly, it's a lot cheaper to do it through CG, because you can reshoot it from different camera angles, and it'll look exactly the same. The problem is, it's rough around the edges, and for a scene like that one in particular, I really think it should have been done in traditional. Now, that's not saying that CG is bad. That's saying that for that scene, CG was not the right tool. That's all. You see, I'm interested in animation. I'm interested in the machine behind the scenes of the animation industry. I'm incredibly interested in it. It's awesome. And I'm interested in all aspects of it. Every tool in the lineup is interesting to me. And talking about which ones are used when and theorizing about what reasons were behind the decisions that are being made is what I do. It's what I do when I'm watching these shows. It's what I think about. I think about, why did they use this type of thing here? Why did they choose to use Sakuga here? Why did they choose to put all their budget into this one scene? Or why did they choose to use CG here and put a lot less of their budget into this one scene? It's something that interests me, and so it's something that I'm going to comment on. I'm not pissed at CG in general. In fact, there are a lot of extraordinary CG scenes that I absolutely love. I mean, Hoseki no Kuni is something that a number of you have brought up in the comments, because it is the best example of really well done CG in the last few years. It's extraordinary. It's beautiful. And for good reason. The reason that it's so good is because the entire studio, for the entire production of the show, went all in on the CG. Most anime studios are not heavily invested into CG. They use it as a tool, and they frequently outsource it to other studios that are solely CG. Studios that do cars, studios that do mechs, studios that do dancing idols. Normally they outsource it. But if you get an entire studio that's all working on the same tools, creating CG environments and CG characters and CG action scenes, it's gonna look fucking good. Partly because they're all dedicated to it and they can put all that work into it, and partly because the show just has to be self-consistent. It's not as though there's one aspect of the show, one scene that is in CG when the rest of it isn't in CG. It's not as though they have to match the style of the CG models to the 2D models that make up the majority of the show. That's difficult. In fact, that's impossible because they're different tools. You can't make a cut from a skill saw look like Sakuga. You can't do it. You can make it look really good though, and if it's in a fully CG environment, you can make it look extraordinarily good. You can do amazing things. Another example of a show that is entirely CG, which I happen to love, is RWBY. Even the first volumes where the CG quality wasn't that good, where Rooster Teeth hadn't invested all the money that they've put into their engine and to their rendering tools and to their staff to create beautiful CG scenes. Even the early ones were really good because Monty was there, and Monty does CG fight choreography. Rip. Rest in peace, Monty Oom. But he does CG fight choreography. It's where he started, using models to create his famous early videos, which got him his job, you know? That choreography and the care that went into it is obvious. It shows. It shows that even though they were using a skill saw, if you will, they were modifying it and they were working really, really hard on it and working really carefully. Other examples of CG that just works are the bits of CG in Gurren Lagann, or Gurren Lagann. Specifically the alien ships, the anti-spiral ships. They work because it looks jarring. It's a wonderful decision, really. It looks jarring to have those ships in CG. They look like nothing else in the show. Everything else in the show is traditionally animated. But those ships look freaking weird and glowy and out of this world and digital. And that's what they should look like. They're alien and strange and weird. And it's an excellent decision. The fights in Gridman look great in CG because he's a big digital CG mech. The mechs for certain scenes in Full Metal Panic look excellent. CG is not bad, and I don't think it's bad, and I don't dislike the use of CG. What I do dislike is bad CG. Poorly integrated CG. CG that pulls me out of the experience of a show because the studio didn't have the budget or decided for some other reason to do a scene in 3D CG instead of animating it traditionally, instead of putting in the work. They went with the easy way. That's what I don't like. I don't hate CG. I hardly hate anything on principle. It's a stupid thing to do. Oh yeah, I hate all CG. Duh. That would be the stupidest thing I could say. No, I love quality. And you do too, I'm sure. You love it. You love when there's work and love put into the shows that you watch. You feel it, even if you don't recognize the exact ways that it's being done, or even if the animation is so far beyond what we can comprehend as viewers in terms of the amount of work that's gone into it. We love seeing quality that is above us, that is beyond what we could ever accomplish. We love it. So that's my position on CG. I don't hate it. I don't love it. I don't feel anything toward it, except that I recognize that it is a tool in the toolbox, and I will continue to talk about it when it comes up, because it is a tool and there is a decision being made every time that it is picked up. You decide to pick up the standard stuff, or you decide to pick up the Sakuga, or you decide to pick up the CG. That's it. I've been TeeHee. Let me know in the comments what you thought of this video. If you liked it, like it. If you want more stuff like this, along with my reactions, hit me with a sub. Ring the bell if you want to get the content right on time. And if you really like this stuff, consider supporting me on patreon.com. That's it from me. I hope you enjoyed it. And I hope to catch you in the next one. Peace.